Hey everybody. All right, today we're comparing the Magnatone Varsity Reverb to the Dr. Z Maz 18. Two similar customer bases, I would say, but very different sounding amps. They're both EL84s. They're both, the Magnatone's 15 watts, the Maz is 18 watts, so similar power, but there's a lot of differences there. Obviously, we're trying to do as close of a comparison as possible today. One thing that's different, the Maz is going through a 212 cab. I'm going to be miking the cream back in the top. The Varsity Reverb is a combo, 112 combo with a Magnatone speaker in it. So there's a little difference in the speaker cabinet there, but you'll be able to hear the voices very different of these two amps. When I did my Maz 18 video, I talked about how big and how much more powerful than 18 watts the Maz sounded. The Magnatone, although it's just as loud as the Maz, it does have a bit of a smaller sound, and you guys will see what I'm talking about. We're gonna start with the Magnatone here. Magnatone does have reverb. I have the non-reverb version of the Maz 18, so there's a difference there. I'll show you guys what the reverb sounds out of the Magnatone as well. But for comparison's sake, when we switch over to the Maz, I'm gonna be putting a reverb on from my board, the Golden Reverberator from Universal Audio. Let's start with some clean tones, just straight through the amp here, no effects on whatsoever. I'm playing through my Nash T63 Telly. This has got Lawlers in it, bridge pickup. That was a bridge there. Here's the middle pickup. Let's put a little bit of reverb on from the amp. So this is spring reverb from the Magnatone itself. A little bit of neck pickup here. So what you hear with this amp is that it's got a lot of mid-range. So much so that in the bridge and on the neck pickup, sometimes it's a little bit much. What I do is usually I tune it so that there's a little more bass and a little more treble on the knobs there. There's no mid control. So I try to scoop out the mids a little bit. But let's get into some pedals that really help this amp out here. I'm gonna switch on the Greer Lightspeed. The Greer, people call it a transparent overdrive, but it does scoop the mid-range a little bit, I noticed that. It has kind of an extended top range, extended bass response, and the mid is a little bit scooped, so just a little bit from that. I'm gonna go back to the bridge pickup and I'll kind of show you what that sounds like. A little bit of brown protein, the green side. It's like a Nobles. This one's kind of cool for some lead stuff. Let's put a little slap on there. A lot of mid-range in the sound, and this amp records really well because it doesn't have an extended bass response, and the high end, although it's present and it's chimey, it doesn't have too much of that spiky stuff. One thing about the Maz, as great as it sounds, sometimes you have to be really careful with the top end of the Maz, and oftentimes I run the cut knob really low because it's awesome in a band setting, but when you're by yourself, it can ring you right in the ear. When you're doing solos, you're gonna pierce right through all the other instruments, but it can be a little bit much sometimes on your eardrums. So one more, let me put a few pedals on just to kind of show you some of the capabilities here. I'll put some delay, a little bit of reverb, and a little bit of harmonic tremolo. That's from the Walrus Monument pedal. Another thing I'll say about the Magnatone, you can get it to distort. I got the volume on 9 o'clock right now. You can get it to distort. It's not a sound that I personally like. It's got kind of that small amp blown out kind of sound, which is really cool. I mean, if you want to do some recordings with it. The thing is, in order to get it to break up, you got to turn it to a volume that your neighbors are going to call the cops on you for. That's one disadvantage of the Magnatone over the Dr. Z. The Dr. Z has an input volume as well as a really good master volume. So if you want it, to sound cranked, you can get that crank sound at lower volumes. And if you have the freedom to crank the master volume too, it only gets even sweeter. So, all right, so let's get into the Maz 18 now. I want to plug that in for you. All right, got the Maz plugged in now. So this is straight into the amp, bridge pickup. So it sounds a lot bigger, a lot more bass response. Obviously it's a 212 cabinet, so we got to take that into consideration, but straight out of the gate, that was a bridge pickup. It sounds a lot fuller, a lot thicker. They both have their purpose. I'm not saying fuller and thicker is always better. The Magnatone on a track sounds fantastic, but sometimes when I'm playing just by myself in my room, I prefer the bigger sound of the Maz. But also on a recording, sometimes I'm rolling off some of those lows. I keep the bass on the Maz 18 usually around 9 o'clock, the mids up around 1 o'clock, and then treble noon. The cut, the way it works is the more you turn up the cut knob, the more high end you get out of the power section. So I actually keep the cut knob around 9 o'clock typically. Any more than that with a telly, and you're taking your head off and you're killing birds and everything else. So all right, so let's go through some of the positions. Just to make things fair, I'm going to include a little bit of spring reverb. Middle pickup sounds. All right, neck pickup. Okay, a little bit of slap. Let's do some slap on the bridge pickup. Okay. All right, with pedals, here's with the Greer Lightspeed. With the Nobles, or the brown protein version of the Nobles. Some harmonic tremolo, delay, and reverb again. So one thing I'll say about the Maz over the Magnatone is that you can do some more hard rock stuff. Right now I'm just going to be putting on the green side of the brown protein and the Greer Lightspeed together. And you could do some stuff like, here's a little bit of Foo Fighters stuff, you know. It's a lot more versatile, I'd say, than the Magnatone. But you want a really sweet, clean tone on a track with some spring reverb that's got a bit of a vibe to it and it has its own voice. The Magnatone's really cool for that. You want an amp that is kind of a jack of all trades and with some pedals and, you know, even just the boost switch that comes with the amp, you can get all sorts of different sounds and it just eats every pedal you throw at it. I'd say go for the Maz. They're similar in price. I think they're both high quality amps, but I will say you get a lot more noise out of the Magnatone with a lot less gain than you do out of the Maz. The Maz is pretty much dead silent. You might get some noise from interference or something like that, but it resists a lot of that stuff really well. Your Wi-Fi router is too close to the Magnatone and you're getting all sorts of buzzing and everything else. So I don't know the science behind that, but the Magnatone does have some of those little quirks. But they're both great amps. Both of them sound great with the mic in front of them, as you guys can tell. And I think you really can't go wrong. It just kind of depends on your vibe. I'd be curious to try the Maz 18 in the combo. There's something to be said about if you're a gigging musician and you want to be able to throw, you know, this size amp into your Honda Civic and get to your gig, it'll fit. You know, the Maz with the 212 cab and the head, I'm sure you could do it, but it's a little bit more. And it looks, in some small bars, it just looks like you're kind of taking over the place, I think. So something to be considered. If you guys have any questions, let me know. And I'm also putting one of these amps up for sale. I don't need both. I haven't decided which one I'm going to keep yet. Let me know in the comments, though, if you guys had both these amps and based on these sound samples here, what would you keep? I'm curious to hear what you guys say. All right, hope everybody's having a great day. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll be back soon. I'm gonna do a little bit of a deeper dive on this Magnatone itself here. I just wanted to kind of compare the sounds today. So, all right, guys.